Hello, this is Jan Hively again with another presentation called Purposeful Lives Create Good for Everyone. Remember in the first presentation titled Changing Expectations for Aging, I spoke about the blue zones. That's the study of those 6 areas around the world where people are more likely to be living beyond the age of 100. The study looked for the factors that were common across those locations to see what it was that would cause or support people to live longer. And what did they find? One of the major factors was the fact that there was no such thing as retirement in any of those communities, because as they grew older, they continued to have sense of purpose. They took care of children, they took care of animals, they did some gardening, they provided some food, they did some teaching. They had a role in the community that was appreciated, recognized, and rewarded by others. In other words, they were doing meaningful work, paid or unpaid, through the last breath. That's a phrase that I use as my mantra. What I say, though, and this goes back to those findings of the Productive Aging Survey that I mentioned in the last session, is the importance of changing the definition of work. We need to do that before we think about changing expectations for aging. The two are so closely related. What does that mean, to change the definition of work? Well, now we have a very limited marketplace definition in this consumer society. We describe work as what we do for pay to be able to purchase goods and services. People who are homemakers or volunteers or students tend to feel belittled. They don't have the same sense of value because they are not working for pay. We need to change it to an expanded definition that includes unpaid work with social and economic value that's essential to the community's future. It's particularly important for older adults, because as older adults retire, they are often thought of as being somewhat useless. Actually, we need all of the productivity that they can offer. Whether it's paid or unpaid, work is productivity that benefits you and or and or your family and or your employer and or your community. All of the following kinds of unpaid work contribute social and economic value to the community. Homemaking, parenting, volunteering, caregiving, managing oneself, which is what we are talking about here in relationship to your clients, and citizenship, being an active citizen. All of those things require the same kinds of skills and habits and attitudes. What is learned in school or in the workplace as children grow up pays off in their parenting, in their employment later on. And that work is, perhaps we could say, the caregiving is almost more valuable than paid work, because if we didn't do it as volunteers, it would have to be done for pay by the public sector and add to the costs. Edgar Kahn is one of my favorite people. He wrote a book called No More Throwaway People. He is the person who's invented time banks in his neighborhood in Washington, D.C., where people could exchange services and based on the number of hours that they used to give the service rather than on dollars. He talks about good work as whatever it takes to rear healthy children, preserve families, make neighborhoods safe and vibrant, care for the frail and elderly, redress justice, and make democracy work. Good work mobilizes capacity, mobilizes the involvement of others. It links capacity to need. It rewards contribution, and it builds the village that we need to find in our neighborhoods or in our schools or in our communities. In general, there's a hunger for identity that begs for a broader definition of work. So often I hear from retirees, particularly males, work was my life and now I have no life, because others don't value what they're doing when they no longer are earning money. Here's a comment from a woman. What do I do? Nothing. I just help out at the church and take care of my grandkids. How would she feel about herself if instead she understood that the community highly valued her volunteer work at the church and her caring for her grandkids? Another person said, I love doing crafts, but I feel guilty if I'm not doing something useful. Well, what the heck is using your hands and your heart and your head to make objects that you can use or others can use? Just to design, to make art. That certainly is generating. That's productivity. The worst problem, I think, happens in long-term care facilities, where people, residents, say to me, it's boring and depressing here, and they won't let me help other residents because it's against the rules. For example, I'm not allowed to push the wheelchair of the resident next to me when we go down to dinner. She has to wait instead, often for a long time, for the official caregiver, the practical nurse, to push her down. Why is that? Because the facility is concerned about possible liability if anything were to happen to either of us if I were to do the job. Well, somehow or other we've got to change the rules because it's important for us to be contributing. What is meaningful work anyway? I'm not going to be able to define it for you because meaning definitely takes on a personal perspective. What is meaningful for you is different from what is meaningful for me. On the other hand, our research shows that there are things that tend to be common across whatever we define to be meaningful. It requires mindfulness. It means that we're focusing our effort, we're focusing our attention on doing it. It's not something that we're doing just by habit. It produces results, something that we can see and identify. When we talk, for example, with people who have been retired for a couple of years and who really miss the workplace, what is it that they miss? They miss working with others on jobs that produce results. Too often we are involved with being busy, doing things, yes, but we can't see the results. We can't say we accomplished something and look at that. Meaningful work tends to attract positive reinforcement. There's somebody who says, you're doing a good job. They notice it. They applaud it. This is a big issue for volunteers. Often people think, well, shall we give them plaques? Do we give them honorary lunches? How can we reward volunteers who are not paid with money? Well, when you ask volunteers, the most common thing that they say that they would really like is just a thank you expressed in a note. Sending someone a note or a card that says, we really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you very much. That's what means the most. That's positive reinforcement. Meaningful work matches up with your interests and skills. In some cases, when people retire, they don't want to do what they've done before. They're accountants. They want to go off and try something else, to learn to do the piano, or to be a sports coach on the soccer court. In other cases, people want to do the same and make use of that in a different arena. For example, the accountant may want to work helping people fill out their tax forms. Whatever they wish, but in the meantime, it definitely needs to match up with their interests, their passions. And it needs to stimulate learning. Ideally, we are learning wherever we are. And often we learn best by teaching, so being a volunteer teacher often stimulates our learning as well. It doesn't detract from what has been said before, because this really says the same thing in a different way. Healthy aging can be equated with productive aging. Productivity contributes to healthy aging. Older adults involved in meaningful work are healthier and more satisfied with life. That's an important research report that was made out of the University of Michigan. And that included all the kinds of meaningful work we're talking about, not just employment. Retirees engaged in productive activities are more satisfied with their retirement, unless they're exclusively caregiving, which can drain from their energies, and especially if they're the sole caregiver. But otherwise, if they're engaged in what they perceive to be productive and what other people perceive to be productive, then they're definitely more satisfied than if they're just simply, so to speak, having fun. Up until now, motivation for employment and retirement has tended to be for fulfillment and challenge rather than for dollars. That's because there have been tended to be pensions that have paid for people who have worked, often for long periods of life, and look forward to retirement so that they can get that pension, which takes care of their basic needs. They choose then to work longer. They choose to try out a new career. But now more and more people have to work longer because of changing economic conditions. Changing economic conditions will require continued employment for a much higher percentage of boomers than for the people who were in the World War II generation. They need income to compensate for periods of unemployment, for wage cutbacks. Often they've had to draw from their 401ks during periods of unemployment long before they ever thought about retirement. They have to compensate in order to be able to meet the expectations that their families have to send their kids to college. In the face of the cutbacks in wages. Income now is less in real dollars than it was 10 years ago, than it was 5 years ago. And they also have to fill the pension gap then between what they do receive, let's say from Social Security, and what they require to meet their basic needs and their family's needs. Responsibility for retirement saving has been shifted to employees. It had been that approximately 80% of employers paid into retirement funds for their employees. That's dropped significantly from 80% down to 20% in the last 10 years. There's also been a drop in rate and percent of retirement savings because of increased costs and the difficulty of holding the line in wages. There are many family heads in particular who have not been able to save. Often, people who incurred loans through their to put themselves through college are still paying off their loans when it's time for their kids to go to college. So they're not able to put away money. It has been estimated that only 40% of boomers have more than of the late boomers. That would be the people now who are in the ages between ages 50 and 60. That only 40% of them have more than $5,000 in the bank. So there is going to be an emerging problem. I think the problem is felt worst by people before they have the age of 65, because they also have to cover the cost of health savings when their Medicare is not paid until they're 65. Having families in later life, more often you find people perhaps in a second family, men starting their families in their 50s, women having babies in their late 40s. And that means that they're going to be trying to send kids to college when they're in their 60s, perhaps in their 70s. So all of that has moved the age for retirement much higher. There's uncertainty about longevity. I expected to pass away by the time that I was 80, and here I am at age 81, looking at how long I can live based upon how much I have in savings. People see that others are living into their 90s to be 100. It's said that 1 out of 3 children born today will live to be 100. But it's unlikely that they'll have the saving to last that long. So that uncertainty causes people to want to work longer to pay for the future, and to be sure, and there is uncertainty also about the future of benefits of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. The uncertainty feeds into the fact that people think that they've got to live longer and work longer. So, and a variety of pressures, including public pressure, will encourage working longer. There is a projected shortfall in pension funds. Some say that change in policy through Congress could make a difference so that that shortfall could be filled and the fund would be sustainable. But now we have projected shortfalls in that, as well as in skilled workers, because young people are not getting the skills that they need for high-skilled jobs, high-tech jobs. And sometimes those who are ready to be retired have skills that are not easily found elsewhere in the workforce. Retirees pay less into taxes. So a government that's already strapped for money would want to increase the number of years that people work so that the people will be paying higher taxes. Also, of course, there's an additional potential for more service needs when retirement assets run out. When people live to an age that is beyond the age of their savings, the public sector will have to take over. And that potential adds to the public pressure to encourage working longer. What is the result? A huge shift in boomer expectations. 80% of the boomers who are now beginning their late 60s, 80% of them say that they're planning to work beyond what they had thought of as the traditional retirement age, which was 62. And many of those in midlife expect to work for pay all their lives. Gen Xers, the millennials, ask them. And ask them when they expect to retire or if they expect to retire. And I think you'll find that expectations have changed dramatically. In any case, whether or not they expect to work longer, the question is whether they will be able to if they continue to face the ageism and other challenges in the current workplace. That's the sad fact, that those who have been laid off by industries who have been sending their work overseas or who have gone bankrupt and don't have the money to pay pensions, as they go out to work later in life, are facing ageism based upon traditional expectations for disabilities, increasing disability. So these problems of challenges. Can you name some? Well, certainly it may be that the lighting is poor. It may be that the noise level is such that they can, with some change in hearing, limitation in hearing, not hear others giving them instructions. I'm sure that you can also think about other obstacles in the workplace. Community vitality will require older adult productivity for both paid and unpaid work. We need more volunteers for nonprofits and public agencies strapped for resources. We need more caregivers. Realize that 30% of boomers don't have children. They can't look to that typical resource. So what is going to happen? We need more volunteers, people who are caring for friends or neighbors as well as for family. And we are going to need more paid caregivers as well. We need more advocates to assure age-friendly communities. We need more tutors and mentors for needy youth. We've got to be sure that all youth stay in school and excel, because they are needed with high skills, with a high level of skills for this high-tech economy. We need more experienced advocates and leaders. That means you. People who can boost others, support the productivity of others, self-organize, organize others as advocates. So what are older adults looking for when they're looking for either paid or unpaid work? Well, actually, as you look at this list, you're going to find that probably a 20-year-old is looking for the same kind of criteria, but older adults have greater need. These are stronger interests. They want meaningful work. They want to be doing something of value that's appreciated. Some people say that it doesn't matter what pay they have, that they would prefer to work for lower pay if it's meaningful than to have a much higher paying job that is not meaningful. And they can, when you get older and have fewer responsibilities, dependents, you can make those judgments for yourself. The key word is flexibility. That's the most important attribute that people look for when they grow older. They want to have the opportunity to travel, perhaps to be employed in the summertime in the north and in the wintertime in the south. Some bookstores, for example, that have chains have developed special schedules for people who are traveling seasonally. They also want time to travel for fun and to see their families and to go to special family events, so that it doesn't necessarily match a typical work schedule, they cannot work as long hours. They tend to work more often part-time, and they require flexible arrangements, greater accessibility, for example. So flexibility is the biggest issue that an employer needs to pay attention to if they want to hire old workers. People are also interested in more social interaction than they can find in their homes. Often, widows, for example, live alone. How do they manage to find others, to get things, work with others to get things done and have fun? Sure, they could show up for go from place to place with playing games or playing golf or whatever. But they're also interested in being able to work as a team, part of a team with others. They want a healthy lifestyle. Volunteer coordinators and employers need to be able to provide the breaks and the access to good food that older adults want. And they want to continuously be learning and growing. Often that happens best, learning happens best when you're teaching. So it can be that the work of the tutor is actually that of learning and growing as well as teaching. This is a chart that I use to put it all together. Purposeful lives bring public good for everyone. Looking at the top left, we need new norms and attitudes. That means that we need new expectations about the fact that people will continue to be productive all their lives and that they will be building on their strengths and that they have interests and strengths and skills to offer. We need to look at the top right, new opportunities for flexible, meaningful, paid and unpaid work. That's the job of the people who are members of the Life Planning Network, the organization that's sponsoring this curriculum. We need to have new ways of describing caregiving and mutual aid so that we respect and applaud and honor the work of caregivers and provide respite for them. And we need to do the work of coaching and facilitating life cycle transitions year-round. Unfortunately, when we're thinking about life coaches, our role as the Life Planning Network, we find that we desperately need more enablers. What are the enablers? That's the basics. What is the basic to survival that is the platform upon which then you can build opportunities that match interests? Well, healthcare, economic security, lifelong education, transportation, technology, all those are important enablers that we all have to support. How do we work on these issues? Well, we can change our structures. That means the way in which the workplace is organized. We can change our practices. That means offering greater rewards for volunteers. We can do new research showing what it is that older adults need in order to be more productive, and policies, public policies and employer policies, etc. All of this is going to take collaboration across sectors, across generations, across disciplines, across cultures. Most important for us and for you as advocates for your clients is to see for yourself and help them see the opportunities for meaningful work. First of all, to understand that meaningful work is both paid and unpaid. And per the productive aging survey that I described in the first session, we need to talk about education, employment, volunteering, caring for children, caring for sick and disabled. All of that is work, it's productivity that benefits you, your family, the community. Ellen Langer is a social psychologist at Harvard who's written some great books about mindfulness. She's done research with her graduate students in long-term care facilities in which one group was assigned daily responsibilities while a counter group was, which is typical in all of these facilities, waited on with no responsibilities. Well, it probably won't surprise you to find out that the people with daily responsibilities felt better about themselves, saw the doctor less, lived longer than those without. Interestingly enough, the responsibilities often were what we think about as a minor, Mickey Mouse. For example, watering the plants, or creating a game for fellow residents. But for the people who did them, those were important responsibilities that gave them a reason to get up in the morning. I wanted to mention the importance of the role of self-management, which is what you will be thinking about with many of your clients. I have this story to tell of my cousin. At 93, I moved from Minnesota to Massachusetts in order to be with her because she really did not have the family around as a single woman. She needed to find the support she needed. So what was interesting to me was to watch her sense of identity and self-assurance grow as she took on the task of hiring other people to help her. For example, renting out the space on her second floor for a woman who would then provide breakfast and drive her to the doctors. For example, hiring a woman to come in and do her shopping and make her supper, or finding a person to do the cleaning. With limited funds, she managed to take care of her needs, and in that process, to live at home, which is where she wanted to be, with her chronic disabilities that limited her to a walker and a wheelchair. Self-management is definitely meaningful work. I'm going to go on now to introduce you to Helen Kivnick, who is going to be providing another PowerPoint presentation, slide presentation, later in this session. I feel honored to introduce her. She's a professor of social work at the University of Minnesota. She actually holds a professorial chair there. She's the Humanities and Arts Editor for The Gerontologist, produced by the Gerontology Society of America. She also has many volunteer roles. She's the founding executive director of an organization for inner-city youth in the Twin Cities of Minnesota called City Songs. She was the co-author of a very important book by the two most important developmental psychologists in the world, Eric and Joan Erickson. While she was at Berkeley in California, she wrote with them Vital Involvement in Old Age that talks about the generativity of older adults. She's also a leader in the creative aging movement. And it's in that role that she has developed what's called VIP, Vital Involvement Practice. So you're going to hear soon from Helen Kivnick, and it's been my pleasure to talk with you today.